welcome back to another GT Sport FIA race on our channel today. We're back at Brands Hatch for round 3 of the FIA Nations Cup in season 23, and this was a strange one because just before the race, literally 20 minutes before, I decided to change my car selection. As you can see, look, we've got 1 minute 23 seconds left and we're 9th on the grid in qualifying. It is not looking good at this stage, and you can see our lap time's been terrible. I just couldn't get the lap in. I'd done really good sectors but just couldn't get the lap together. We had changed tyres and this was our final one. We're still behind on this lap on our 24 point, I think it's a 24.4, but that lap had a spin in it. It was on for a very low 23 and I just messed it up trying to push too hard. Obviously got a little bit of pressure, so this lap was just about trying to consolidate some sort of result in qualifying. As you can see there, the reason for the change in car was because when I was going to go with the Corvette, and when I went into the to see the times people had done in the Corvette in the top 10, they pretty much all were using the counter steer assist, and that put me off using it because I was thinking, hang on a minute, they're probably using that because that's benefiting them. So I thought, I'm not going to put myself in a negative like a disadvantage with that car by not using it. I just won't use the car. I'll go and use the Porsche and we'll just use obviously the ABS and no traction control like we normally do. We go over the line, and luckily just before the end of qualifying, the 15 seconds left, we got ourselves into P2 in qualifying. So not a very good lap. We had potential to get within a couple of attempts of the top time, although this guy at the top was extremely fast. He's one of the fastest on the game. I knew I wasn't going to beat him in qualifying, but I think I could have pushed him fairly close, but as you could tell by the deltas that I was up and down, etc. So, but luckily we got away with an okay result in qualifying, considering this was quite a competitive split again. Obviously a lot of S-rated drivers in here, as you can see going through the this Mura 30, extremely fast driver, one of the fastest on the game that I've come across. Myself there with not the best lap, as you could tell from watching that. I wanted to include that lap in to show you how intense it was for me in that qualifying session, and we managed to get P2, Matty and P3 there, and then going through the grid you can see a lot of Porsches. The Matty guy was in third, was in the Corvette. I'm not sure whether he was using counter steer assist, probably, I'm not sure, probably not. It was just, I noticed GTP Twizzy was using it on the replay when I watched the back to see how he was doing his lap in the Corvette, because I got down to a 23.0. I thought I could get down to a 23.6 or 7, but I was a bit like, I'm not sure I can get to a 23.5. So I watched his lap to see where I could get the time, and I noticed straight away he had counter steer assist on. So I thought, I'm not using that car. There's obviously some benefits you get from that car with having it on, and I thought I'll just go back to a trusted car. 20 minutes to go, I'll just have to go with Porsche, and I want to it's a car that I know I can drive fairly easily, just go into it straight away. So we quickly jumped on, managed to get down to a 22.8 straight away, but then obviously the consistency wasn't 100% there, but I was fairly confident that that would get better during the race and etc, and I could start pushing a little bit harder and start maybe getting closer to the times that I should have been getting. But we had done a bit of practice in the Corvette as well, which is a shame because we had done about an hour's worth of practice, and then I changed cars. But I think I made the right decision there, luckily scraping in with a second position in qualifying right at the very last seconds of qualifying. So we got away with that one, and we go to the back of the grid there, P20, 2.1 seconds behind the top time. So it's quite a close field again. You do get that on Brazil, Brands Hatch, not Brazil, sorry. And now we're just going to wait for these the countdown to start and then get along with this race. So you can see we're starting the race, waiting for the countdown to go down to 1 so we can start get racing. We've got the Corvette behind us and a bunch of 911 RSRs following the Corvette. So the risky thing with that Corvette is it's very fast on the straights, but I felt pretty confident with the Porsche over that in terms of race pace, because you can generally get better exits on the corners on that Corvette. You can get the power down a lot earlier in this 911, and you can push it through the corners a little bit more. So I think I made the right decision to go to this car even with the lack of practice before it, as I think I was in a better position for my race pace. So going through, trying to stay with this guy's slipstream up ahead. He's one of the fastest on the game. He's a really fast driver, especially around this track. He was absolutely on it. So my aim at this point was to try and get this slipstream, try and use some of his slipstream to gain us some time. But if you had the little look in the mirror, going into that really tricky left-hander, the Corvette, if you would have seen in the top right-hand corner, went spinning off and made a mistake. I only just spotted it on the replay. We're going to have a little look now. What he does, he brakes literally not even a second too late, and it's just enough to cause you on that. It's such a hard corner to get right. If you make a little error there, you do end up running off wide like that, and it's a tricky one. It can just drag you out to the full width of the track, and then you lose so much time. He ended up last after that, which was a shame. He actually got a bit aggressive when he braked. He put his foot flat down, and it looked like he tried to spin it back on line. I think he should have just kept his braking in a straight line and then just slowly crept back on the track, and he might not have lost as many places, but that's obviously, in the moment, you just want to get back on the track, so it's understandable. So now following P1, actually staying with his slipstream reasonably okay at this early stage. Obviously he's not pushing 100%, he's probably trying to build up his rhythm and slowly get into that. It's a good idea to, instead of just going all out flat out on lap 1, you can make an error doing that. So at this stage there, we're 7 tenths behind. He's pulling away on this straight there. He got a really nice exit off that last corner. It's one area that I can tell straight away I need to improve compared to him. Going through turn 1, we're not really pushing too hard. You can tell that this is, obviously we've not had that much practice, because we're not pushing 100%. We're just trying to get used to this car, and even then, still going through the first sector split is still faster than what we did in qualifying by nearly 2 tenths. So it shows you how weak our qualifying run was. That with full fuel on, we've actually gone a faster first sector, but some of that might be a little bit slipstream assisted, but then we've lost it now. We're out that slipstream, and we've just got to try and concentrate on the race now. And for me, the race now wasn't about staying with him. I felt if I would have tried too hard to stay with that guy, it would have probably forced an error. So you can see I start doing fuel saving. I think it was a wise decision. I probably could have stayed closer to the guy in front, but I don't think I would have been able to hold on to him. I could have just made the gap not increase so much, but I think it would have been a risky thing to do in terms of risking it on this track when I've had little practice. So I thought I'd go with the safer option. I've not done too much practice in this car. We're going to save a bit of fuel, try and keep the gap to about 1.4 seconds to the guy behind. As long as it kept him out, the aim was just to keep him out my slipstream. If I can keep him out the slipstream and save fuel, I didn't think he'd be saving as much fuel as what I was able to do, because our qualifying pace was quite a bit stronger than his, and we didn't really achieve our best lap. So you can see we go over the line on 24.0, nothing special. You know, the guy ahead hit a 23.0 on that lap, second faster nearly. So it wasn't a particularly strong lap by myself. Like I said, did a bit of fuel saving as well, which probably lost me a couple of attempts as well. But the aim again is just keeping it steady. This track, it will bite. If you make a little mistake, it'll cost you a lot, because one little error on that grass and you're off, and you do lose a lot of time. So it's about just trying to maintain a good result. I wanted to get a reasonably good result, because obviously with round 2 that we did in Interlagos, we only got about 1,500 points, I think it was, from that race. It wasn't a massive scoring round. So this round, obviously I knew that there'd be a higher chance of scoring points if I could get a good finish, because the lobby was quite a high rated lobby. There was a fair few S rated drivers in there. So when there's a lot of S rated drivers in there, you do tend to get higher points for your result. So just concentrating, you can see there a little bit up on our previous lap, just concentrating on the track, keeping that guy behind us 1.3, 1.4 seconds. I wasn't worried if he gained a little bit closer, because as soon as I put level 1 on the fuel mixture, coming out the final corner, I was able to just pull it back up to like 1.4 seconds. If you have a look there, straight back up to 1.4. So saving fuel in that middle sector and through some of the corners again, back to level 2. Obviously level 2 fuel mixture won't lose you a massive amount, it'll just lose you a little bit on acceleration and on top speed, obviously. So using that as much as possible. I didn't want to start doing too much fuel saving, because I didn't want to just get him in my slipstream. I just wanted to just control that gap so that he was out of the slipstream at all the time. I didn't want to let him in the slipstream, because if you let him in the slipstream, then he can start putting you under pressure, and then you don't know if someone's going to make a move. And I thought it's just a safer bet. Put it in that 1 mixture for the acceleration and brake and power zones, then into 2 through some of the corners, and just save a little bit of fuel whenever we could. So you can see there, we're controlling that gap, still 1.3 seconds. I felt really controlled at this point, because I felt like we did a 1:23 on lap 3, and that's with fuel saving. I think we could have been down to like a 23.5 to 6 at this point if I would have been pushing like the guy ahead, but it wouldn't have been fast enough to match his 23.0s that he was doing. So I think there was probably, in terms of our race pace, we were about 4 tenths to maybe half a second behind his. I think if we would have practiced a lot more before this with this car, we could have been within 3 tenths of his race pace, 2-3 tenths, but still it wouldn't have been enough to challenge him in this race. He definitely had a pace advantage over us, and for me it was all about trying to keep this P2 from the guy behind me. Obviously, we haven't got that Corvette in this race anymore. He's right at the back of the grid after that incident. So I know that in terms of straights, the guy behind is not really going to be able to make much of a move on me in that Porsche. The only way he's going to be able to get past me is if I make an error somewhere. So trying to concentrate on keeping our line steady, still saving fuel. You can see there, back into fuel mixture 2. I leave it on all the way through this corner now, and then what I tended to do was put it back to 1 before we got to this fast left-hand corner, because I wanted to get a lot of exit speed coming from this corner, because that's where you can gain some time. So you can see there we're 1.2 seconds ahead, back into fuel mixture 1, and we start gaining now on the straight. So 1.3, that's genuinely the way I was trying to do it. As long as I was keeping him out that slipstream, that's all I really wanted to do at this point, and maintain this lead, as I felt pretty confident that I was saving the fuel enough to give myself a little advantage in the pit stop. So you can see there, pushing fairly hard through the corners, being a little bit cautious on that left hand curb. It can flick you out, and it can try and like flick you out and lose your rear end, and you've got to be very fast to save the car if it does do that. And again, through that middle sector split, we're up on our best lap. We obviously had a bit of fuel saving there going into the final corner, and we're 1.6 seconds ahead at this point, so we're not too worried about, as we got a little bit of oversteer there on the exit of that corner. So we lost a bit of time on this lap as we go over the line, probably on a 24.0 or something. Yeah, 24.0, as we lost a little bit of time on that exit as we tried to put the power down a little bit earlier to just go over that line with a slightly better lap than what we'd done. But maintaining that lead, back into fuel mixer 2, and we're just constantly looking at that 1.5 second lead that we have over the guy behind us. And that was the key thing. I wanted to just keep it at 1.3 to 1.5 seconds. I didn't want to start charging off and building up, 2-3 second lead. I think I could have been maybe within 2 seconds of the guy ahead at this point if I would have just been using 1 and pushing really hard. But it just would have been too risky for me. I didn't have the confidence without the practice in this car. I haven't driven this car properly for a while. We did have a little go at Suzuka with it a week ago or so in the qualifying session, but we didn't do a race with it. I did a couple of races actually, sorry, but that's all we've done with this car in a while. So I've not really done too much driving with this, so I didn't want to start pushing the limits as much as I probably could have done, and it wasn't really worth it, like I say, because second position would be a good result in this race, and I'd be extremely happy with that. And so we got a little bit loose coming out that final corner. He's really staying with us, though. If you look in the distance there, that top right hand corner shows you that we're not dropping him. I wasn't 100% sure whether he was doing any fuel saving. I wasn't to know. I just guessed that he may not be doing the fuel saving as much as we're doing, purely because with the fact that his qualifying position was around, I think it was about half a second slower, and we didn't even do a good lap in that. So my guess was that we would be able to save fuel and maintain a similar speed to him and save more fuel. So again, go through lap 7, trying to concentrate on our lines, getting it into the apexes nice and smoothly. Again, on that exit, just being cautious on that curve as well. If you put the power down a little bit too soon there, you can lose the rear end. So we're starting to approach the pit stop phase. You can see that we're on lap 7. Pit stop phase is lap 9. That's the end of lap 9 is when we're going to want to pit. So we're a couple of laps away from pitting, and you can start telling. You can see now that them left-hand tyres are starting to take a little bit of wear. They're the tyres that will take it, obviously, on a clockwise track like Brands Hatch with fast right-hand corners. You're going to start seeing that wear first on them left-hand tyres, the front left and the rear left. Obviously, it's starting to. I could feel it as well when I was driving. There wasn't as much grip, even coming out some of the corners. I could start feeling the rears going a little bit loose. So we're starting to lose a bit of time in them sectors. We're obviously saving fuel as well. So probably about 3-4 temps is fuel. The other 3-4 temps is probably just where the tyres are starting to fade a bit, and I'm having to drive a little bit more cautious. We're about 6.5 seconds behind the leader at this stage. So at this stage, with the fuel saving, we're losing about 7 temps a lap to the leader. Like I say, I think if we wasn't doing the fuel saving and we was 100% on it and pushing as hard as we could be around probably about 2.5 to 3 seconds behind the leader. But there's no way we would be able to follow him. I think we would have been losing 3 temps, maybe 4 temps. If we would have had practice, maybe 2 to 3 temps a lap at least. He definitely was a faster driver on this track, and he's one of the fastest on the game. So there wasn't much I could really do about his pace. It was just about trying to get the best result that I could get, and not worrying about him. It's one thing that you can fall into a trap on racing games where you don't want to get beat, so you start pushing yourself too hard and you make mistakes. It's one thing if you go back to Alan Prost, might not have been the most exciting driver at all times, but if he didn't have the car and he knew he wasn't the fastest on the track, he'd get the result that he needed. And that's why he won so many titles as well, because obviously he had the intelligence as well. And it's one thing you do need to learn in racing games as well, in sim racing, is if someone's faster than you and you're to stay with them, you're going to need to start taking risks, and them risks are then going to cost you more positions, because if you make an error, 2 errors, 3 errors, 4 errors, you could end up 15th, 16th position. So it's just about trying to maintain your speed and not make too many errors. Sometimes, you know, unforced errors will happen, and even if you're not pushing too hard, unforced errors can still happen. It's not something that you can just eliminate, but I think you can reduce the likelihood of them happening. So at this stage, we're just trying to keep that guy behind us and not worry about the gap that is appearing in front of us. As like I say, there wasn't much chance of me staying with that guy. So this lap is lap 9 out of 18, so halfway distance at the end of this lap, so it'll be time to pit for ourselves, get rid of them tyres that are starting to wear, get ourselves some fresh tyres on, so that we can start pushing a little bit harder and get some maybe 1 minute 23 laps in when we've got them fresh tyres. And obviously I do like to put in a couple of reasonable laps when you put the fresh tyres on, because it gives you a new delta to aim at. So, you know, I do look at the deltas on the screen a lot of the time when I go through sector splits to see what the lap's like, to see how I can control the pace and stuff. And we're still obviously 1.3 seconds behind, ahead of the guy in P3. So we've managed that gap really well at this stage. We've still got 2.5 laps of fuel, so if I wanted to do, I could do another 2 laps after this. But for myself, I think that would have been pointless, because, you know, in these races with tyre wear on 10 and you've got 9 laps, you want to get them off and get some fresh tyres. So the leader goes in the pits, he's got 8% fuel, we've got 20%, so we've actually done a fairly good job at fuel conserving there. Obviously, he had obviously been using one mixture the whole race, whereas we have been using that, like changing it over, and it's going to gain us a little bit of time in the pit stop, maybe a couple of seconds, but nothing massive. It's just going to be a few seconds to bring us a bit closer. But like I say, he's then going to be able to drive on one mixture all the way to the end. We would probably have to be a little bit more cautious with the short shifting on one mixture, because obviously the fuel is averaged out to how you was using it. So that's what you need to remember when you're pitting. You know, however you drove in that first half, when you put it to that diamond, you need to try and copy that driving. So the aim was to just short shift a bit. I was going to use one mixture a little bit more, because you do find that in the last thing you can use one a little bit more, because in general it goes a little bit more than what you need that diamond. So that's what we're doing there. We're 5.2 seconds, so we actually gained nearly 3 seconds on him in the pit stop. So it did gain us, it was about 2.5 seconds actually. So it did gain us a fair bit, that fuel saving. But like I say, I think if we would have just gone aggressive, we probably would have gained a little bit more. The guy who was behind us before we went in the pits stayed out, so it'll be interesting to see what his percentage of fuel is on when he goes in that pits, and see if he was fuel saving as well, or and how much of a time advantage we have when we come out of the pits, and see where he is in relative behind us. So going through to the end of lap 10, let's see if he pits. We're going to have a little look. I think it'll be P1 there. Yeah, he's pitted. He's only got 4% fuel, so he had definitely not saved as much fuel as us. We had definitely saved a lot more fuel than him, and we was managing that gap. So it was good to see that. So I knew that I'd come out ahead of him. So you can see now, coming out the pits, let's just see what the gap is to the guy behind us. Did that fuel saving work in terms of securing P2? Let's have a little look now. As he comes out of the pits, he's 3.5. That's going to go up as we go through the corner. So about 4.5 seconds ahead. So that's really nice. We've got 4.3 second lead. So that fuel saving in that stint really did a good job of that. So going through this left hand corner, at that stage I had a little look at the delta, was fairly confident, and then we do something a little bit silly here. We brake, and we did what the Corvette did. We missed our braking point by a fraction. However, I didn't put the power down. I tried not to panic. You can see I'm not flooring it. I just gradually put that power back in and try and control the car a little bit more on the acceleration. But we lose a big chunk of time, probably around 8. I think it's 7 to 8 seconds. So let's have a little look what we do. The one board is our brake reference. You can see there we brake just a fraction too late. We get our tyres on that grass. I tried to slam on once I was back on the tarmac, and then not put too much steering angle in, and then accelerate in a straight line. And we've reduced the loss that we've done, but I was so frustrated with myself at that, because it was an unforced error that I just didn't think through. I just missed my braking point by a fraction. I must have just been daydreaming for a second, and a horrible error to make. And let's just have a little look how much time that's lost, because we should have really been hitting a 23.5 to 7 on that lap with the fresh tyres on. It would have been a better lap. You've got the brand new tyres on, you would have been pushing reasonably hard. And you can see I'm annoyed, and back to that, it happens every time I make a mistake. Start driving a little bit aggressive as I'm a little bit frustrated, but luckily we didn't seem to lose too much time there as we were driving aggressive. We actually seemed to drive it reasonably well. So let's see what time it is when we go over this start finishing line. A little error on that final corner where I'm trying to get on the power really early. So let's have a little look. So 1 minute 30, nearly a 1 minute 31. So nearly a full, around about 8 seconds we actually lost in that incident. So that's a real shame. We had a comfortable position there in P2 basically, but now we've got an issue where we're 2.5 seconds behind the guy in front of me, but we still got to do that short shifting to maintain the fuel. So you can see maybe he probably would have had enough fuel to rev it a bit higher. So you can see me changing gear a little bit earlier than what you would optimal change in this car. You'll notice it down the straights. With this car you do tend to want to rev it hard, but I'm having to change gear quite a bit, either like halfway on that bar like then, or just before the end of the bar. So a little bit frustrating, but this is how I had to drive to try and gain on him, because if I use fuel mixer 2 I'm going to lose too much time. So I have to short shift it in first gear and just try and keep as much speed as I can. You can see I'm driving as hard as I can at this point. I want to get back that position. I'm annoyed at myself for doing it. We've got to try and put him under pressure, because if we don't keep him honest and having to push, then he's just going to get that second position, and it's not something I wanted to give away after that. It was a bad mistake by myself, and it was an unforced error. Really, I had the race under control at that point for P2, and we make a terrible mistake. So I was a bit annoyed at myself for that, but I just let myself down on that one corner. I think it was literally a moment where I braked a fraction too late, and then once you brake late on that corner, you just end up just running off wide with the camber of the track, and you lose so much time when you do that. So at this point now, it's just about concentration and just getting back into a rhythm of the track. Obviously, as you can see there, we're having to do that short shift in, so I didn't think I'd be able to catch him on outright pace, because he's probably got more fuel to push it to the end. So what I thought I'm going to have to do is just try and keep this gap around that 2.3 to 2.5 second mark, and just put him under pressure so that he might make a mistake as well. That's the only real thing that I could do at this stage. Just keep putting the pressure on, drive as fast as I can, and you see there we're actually doing an alright lap at this point with nearly 4 temps up. Going into this fast right hand corner again. Let's see how we take that. We're pushing reasonably well. We do a little bit of oversteer on the exit where we're pushing quite hard, but you can see we're changing gear fairly early still, not pushing the revs too high, because that's when this Porsche is going to use all its fuel up. So we're still managing to go faster though there, 4 temps up, so you can still get reasonable lap times with this Porsche when short shifting a bit. It's a good thing to note really, because obviously we're changing gear sometimes close to the end of the rev, but this car really gains acceleration when you push the revs really high. But we're changing gear at the moment, just over half revs there, and we go over line at 23.5. Only 6 temps behind the leader's fastest lap of the race. When I'm guessing that lap was done with a lot more revs being used. So we definitely have potential on this track with this car, and it was good that I got that close. You can see there we're down to 2.2 seconds behind the leader now, and you can visually see we actually gained a fair few temps on that lap there. And this is what I wanted to do, just keep on putting the pressure on, because if we can put the pressure on, he might make a mistake somewhere. You never know. That's why you always got to just try your best at putting pressure on in these situations. There's no point just giving up with this amount of laps to go. Just put that pressure on and hope that he's going to make an error somewhere, and we can get that second place back. So going through these corners, we're a little bit down on the previous best lap. We didn't hook up a couple of them corners quite as well, but we're doing an okay job of putting some reasonable pace together here. We do that corner again, and that little moment on the curb there with the rear one step out, and looking ahead there, I thought that he made an error, and when we go around the corner, he's ran wide on that corner. It's caught him out. We've got that P2 back. Unlucky for us though, he didn't lose as much time as what we lost. He's still only 1.3 seconds behind us, so it's back into what it was pretty much like before the pit stop. So at this point I thought I was fairly confident we'd be able to maintain that gap to him behind at 1.4 seconds, because In the first stint, when he was probably using more fuel than us, we were able to do it by using fuel mixture 2, just keeping it around the same amount. So I thought with short shifting but using fuel mixture 1, it's probably going to be a very similar kind of situation. So I was so happy to get this position back at that phase, because I felt like I'd earned it in the first stint, but then I made that stupid error. So luckily for us, we've managed to get ourselves back into P2 through kind of forcing an error, but it was probably a silly error where he's ran wide in the braking zone, a bit like what we did on that corner there. So luckily we've got 3 or 4 laps to go now, 4 laps to go, and we've managed to get ourselves back into P2 with a 1.3 second lead. So now we just need to concentrate on keeping this car on the track. We don't want to be pushing the limits massively. What we want to do is keep it calm, keep it on the track, and just make sure we don't make any real big errors as we go through that corner. And the most random amount of oversteer, again, it was so strange. We're going to have a little watch this. Watch where this happens. It doesn't happen on the curb, it starts before the curb. There, it starts just there before we get onto the curb, and luckily we, for some fast reactions, managed to save that and not lose too much time. I think we only lost about 0.3 of a second there. He's nearly back in the slipstream, so I'm going to try and push a little bit harder out some of these corners and try and build that gap up. Luckily for us, this last corner we did tend to build up a little bit of a lead most laps, so I pushed reasonably hard around there, getting on the power fairly early, you can see there, and we've got that lead back to 1.2 seconds. So luckily we only actually lost about 2-3 tenths from when that happened, so not too bad. We go over the line on a 24.5, obviously that incident in there as well, so not the worst thing that could happen, but a reminder that, you know, this track can just catch you out at any opportunity. It was a real random thing. It wasn't even on the curb that we lost that. It was coming out of the corner where the power just kicked in and the rear just stepped out. It was a real weird one, but luckily for us, we get away with it. Still in P2, a long way behind the leader now with what's gone on in this race. Obviously, we lost about 8 seconds in that one incident. So looking at that, we probably would have been around 7 seconds behind at this stage without that incident, but then he would have been gaining. So we would have probably been under 10 seconds without obviously the incidents that we've had, but I don't think we could have caught him up with the strategy we were running or been with him. Even if we were running one mixture to the end, I think we would have finished around 5 to 6 seconds behind or something like that, and I don't feel like we would have had the pace to really be anywhere near him to put pressure on. It would have been at least 5 second, 6 second gap to him, because he's definitely got a 3 or 4 tenths advantage over us in his race pace. So at this point I was just really happy that we've got that P2 back, so we now need to make sure we concentrate on not making a mistake for the rest of the race. So you can see lap time 1 minute 24.2, nothing amazing. It's just about keeping it on the track at this stage after making that little error that just reminded me again that we could lose this position as easily as we just got it back. So you can see that it was quite, I have to say, this was quite a tense race, because after that mistake we were chasing him down, we were staying around a similar pace, and I was really getting sweaty at this point. I must admit, I was really starting to feel the pressure, and the hands were starting to feel clammy. I've got him behind me, and I've got to really keep concentration on this track. I can't afford to make another error in this race. He's 1.3 seconds behind, one error, and he's got that P2 back. We're in a solid position here for some points. This is a fairly high split. It's not as high as some races you join, but it's a reasonable race in terms of getting some solid points in this FIA Nations Championship. It brings me on to another point really, but this the FIA, I really wish they'd changed the rule on the FIA Nations is the one that's really going to be hard to get in the top 24 stars, because it's 2 people per nation, and in general you'll find like France, Germany, UK, Spain, etc. have a lot of sim racers, so to get the top 2 is going to be an extremely hard thing. I don't know if we'll ever make it into that top two in the top 24 stars. We might get there one week by luck, but in general you're going to find there's people that will be a little bit faster than us, and it's going to be really hard to do. The FI manufacturer is a little bit easier to get into, because you can just pick a weaker car that you know a lot of people won't go, and then you can try and get yourself into it that way. But I think for this FIA Nations and even the FIA manufacturers, I think what would make better racing was if they added, like say, 4 cars of the same car can be in the top 24 star racing the manufacturers, and 4 drivers from each nationality. You want the better drivers in that top 24 star race, in my opinion. You don't just want, you know, people from countries that have got 5 people driving on the games because they're the only ones in the country. That's not going to make the better race than the last race. We want to see the best drivers, and it'll be interesting to see if I'm close to the top 24 overall, but won't make it in. So we'll have a little watch out for that. I know it did used to be that the top 24s would be in it, and it wasn't down to like obviously just the top 2 from each nation. But as you can see there, the guy behind me, if I had a little look in the top right hand replay there, he had a little moment coming out of that corner, and it's actually give us a little bit more breathing space. He's obviously trying to push, but this is the final lap. I'm just going through this final corner now, taking it nice and easy and going over the line with a 1.2 second lead. So luckily we finished 17 seconds to the guy behind. That would have been around 8 to 9 seconds obviously without that unforced error. So I was reasonably happy with that performance considering we changed cars. We get a solid second position and we actually come away with over 2,000 points in that race. So a fairly good result all round, and I hope you guys enjoyed that race. A little bit different to constantly battling. It was more of a case of under pressure in different situations, and I really enjoyed it. I have to say I did feel the pressure in that race. It was really good to be involved with, and that's the kind of race I enjoy on GT Sport, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Make sure you give it give myself a subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Click that notification button so you don't miss any future videos. I'm trying to get uploads every single day on GT Sport. That is the aim at the moment, to make sure that every day I have a GT Sport upload, and then the other games will be uploaded like Project Cars 2, Assetto Corsa earlier in the day on the same day. So that's the aim. We're doing it at the moment. We've been doing constant uploads every day for quite a while now, and that's how I want to continue doing this channel. I want it to be a daily channel where we've always got good footage going on, and I hope you guys enjoy that, and I know I enjoy being involved in that race. And we're going to be back with more FIA, more daily races and more content very soon, including track guides and everything to help you guys out. Thanks again for watching, everyone.